By prevailing over all obstacles and distractions, one may unfailingly arrive at his chosen goals or destination. Christopher Columbus. Have you ever struggled playing video games for hours on end, or binge watching your favorite Netflix series? Probably not. How about studying for an exam, or getting started on working on your new side business? Probably a bit harder, right? Sometimes it can feel like there's this invisible wall in front of you and it stops you from even getting started, let alone being consistent on it and working on it for over an hour. And this happens regardless of you knowing and understanding that if you did focus on those things, it would probably bring you more long-term happiness and satisfaction. It almost sounds like a smoker who knows what they need to do or knows what they need to stop doing in order to be happy, but they can't because they're addicted to it. But video games don't contain nicotine. They're not addictive. Or are they? Dopamine is the reward hormone that's released in the brain when we do activities that bring us immediate pleasure. Our brains actually go as far as developing priorities based on which activities are going to provide the largest hit of dopamine. This is why you never struggle to find the motivation to eat a piece of cake. It's a high dopamine releasing activity. It brings loads of immediate pleasure. So our brain associates it with being something that it wants to do. It doesn't put any barriers in the way of doing so. And this often overrides our logical brain that tells us that eating loads of cake isn't necessarily good for us. No immediate reward means no dopamine release, or at least very little of it, which probably explains why juxtaposed with a basic salad, it doesn't seem as appealing as the piece of cake. You see, eating one salad doesn't instantly reduce your waistline or clear up your skin. And I think if we're not kidding ourselves, we can all agree that a piece of cake tastes better than a piece of salad. So our brain is naturally going to develop more of a reward system based around eating the cake over eating the salad. Dopamine in itself is not bad for us. The problem is that a lot of the activities we take part in end up releasing an unnatural amount into our brains. Activities like going through social media, watching too much TV, video games, pornography, all of these things release tons of the stuff and it causes us to be constantly overexposed. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that we develop a high dopamine tolerance. This is due to a process in the body known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is basically where our body is trying to maintain a certain balance in loads of different ways. Take, for example, your body temperature. The human body wants to stay at a consistent temperature. So if you're somewhere that's hot, it will produce certain activities and do certain things to ensure that your temperature is kept at the correct level. Vice versa, if you're somewhere cold, it will do other activities, it will do other things to ensure that it keeps your temperature up. It's trying to maintain homeostasis. This method of achieving homeostasis is simply called the counter method. So for example, when it's hot, you sweat. When it's cold, you shiver. But the other way our body maintains homeostasis is by reducing our sensitivity to things by building a tolerance. An example of this tolerance effect is drinking alcohol. Someone who drinks a lot of alcohol develops a high tolerance. It takes a lot more alcohol for them to feel the effects of it on their body. On the other side of that, someone who doesn't drink a lot gets drunk a lot easier. Their body feels the effects a lot quicker. The same thing happens with our dopamine receptors. So the more we get exposed to it, the less sensitive to it we become. The problem here is we need to do even more of the activities in order to receive the same hit. So now, just like the alcoholic who has moved on from drinking a Smirnoff Ice and is now drinking straight whiskey, we can no longer receive reward or feel much fulfillment or enjoyment from doing any basic tasks. So things like studying for a test or working on a business now bring little to no pleasure to you whatsoever. And the activities that do bring you pleasure, you now need to do so much more of them to receive the same reward. This is why you end up watching even more TV. This is why you play video games even longer, because it's now the only thing that can bring you that sense of happiness. So how do we fix this? Well, it's a two-part process, which is very simple, but it's very difficult to do. The first thing is we need to detox ourselves from dopamine. We need to break away from it. in order to give our receptors the chance to re-establish their sensitivity. Personally, I recommend the 24-hour method. This is 24 hours where you do no activities that would be associated with releasing dopamine. This means no screens, no technology. It goes as far as meaning no music, not even reading, no board games. We are talking about intentionally being very bored for 24 hours. What can you do on this day? Well, you can eat, you can walk, you can exercise, but with no music, and you can meditate and journal. And that's about it. And remember, the idea is not for this to become your new normal. This isn't the way I expect you to live your life. But you're taking a very intentional, very deliberate break from anything that's going to initiate that process in our brain. Think of it like making the alcoholic go cold turkey and giving them the chance for their organs and their body to rest and recuperate from the overexposure to these chemicals that get put into their body. Now, of course, following this 24-hour period, we want to start reintroducing activities. But what we need to do is change our approach to them, to change the pattern. We need to reprogram our minds. At the moment, this is probably the way your mind is working. You think of the hard activity that you want to get started on, let's say working on a business, and you don't receive any stimulation to do it. You then think of a distracting activity like sitting to watch TV, and you already start to feel pleasure. So you then sit down and do it, and you receive pleasure. You receive that hit of dopamine. We don't need to remove anything from this equation. We actually need to add something in and just move things around a little. So you think of your hard activity, and you don't receive any stimulation. You then think of the activity you would prefer to do, watching TV, and you receive that stimulation. This is where we need to interrupt it. At this point, you need to have a conversation with yourself, and yes, some willpower will be required, but less if you've already done the detox. You're going to do your hard activity regardless of motivation, and you're going to use that pleasurable activity as a reward for completing it. As an example, writing the script and recording what was needed for this video was my hard activity for the day. I completed it, and then I rewarded myself with an hour of TV of which I felt absolutely no guilt about watching. And that's the other side of it, is all these activities that we take part in that we know are not truly fulfilling to us, it's actually difficult to enjoy them. How many times have you sat watching TV with this little voice in the back of your head telling you that you should be doing something else right now? It's hard to then just be in the moment and enjoy what you're doing. Another example might be food related. Say you want to get more salad, more greens into your diet. Well, before you eat your pasta as your reward or whatever it may be, the meat, you need to first eat all of your greens, all of your salad. Do the hard work first and then use the other activity, the stuff you would normally eat, as a reward. A lot of nutritionists and dietitians already recommend this method simply for the fact that if you eat all of your salad and vegetables first, you're already satiating yourself. You've already filled your stomach with food, and maybe it will reduce the amount of the other things that you eat on your plate. Basically, what we are trying to do here is complete the activities that are important to us in the long run, without depriving ourselves of the small pleasures in life as well. I'm not trying to tell anyone to not do things that bring them pleasure, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your long-term well-being and happiness. So as with most things, it's all about balance. But just remember that when you're balancing things, it also matters with what you're going to put on first. If you put the heavy stuff on first, you're going to tip the scale one way. We need to gradually and carefully add things on. And we need to start with our top priorities. Start with the activity that's the most important to you, and then everything else can come after that. So if you have a go at the dopamine detox, please let me know how you get on. Please let us know in the comments if you've got another way of approaching this. And as always, take care of yourself.